Hello everyone, and welcome to this Diablo 3 dungeon guide for the Monkey King's Garb set. We'll be going over how to set up your character, and I'll also explain how to complete both primary dungeon objectives. Keep watching until the end to see a full playthrough of the entire set dungeon with additional tips. To get started, let's first take a look at the set bonuses so we'll know how to gear out our character. This set revolves around the Sweeping Wind skill. A toughness bonus is provided for using it, along with a damage buff to select skills, including Wave of Light, which we'll be using in our build. The 4-piece set bonus is an important mechanic for completing one of the primary dungeon objectives. When enemies are hit, a decoy is spawned every second that will damage enemies. It is vital to keep Sweeping Wind active to receive these benefits. Therefore, spirit generation and resource cost reduction will be the main priorities for the gearing and skills setup. In this setup, we are using 5 of the 6 set pieces in the head, neck, torso, hands, and leg slots. In the shoulder slot, we have Lefebvre's Soliloquy, which provides a significant toughness increase when using Cyclone Strike. In the feet slot, we take Illusory Boots, which allows us to move unhindered through monsters. These boots are extremely helpful in this dungeon that requires grouping of enemies, and will help you avoid getting trapped and taking too many hits. In the wrist slot, we have Pentos Pride, which provides a damage bonus to Wave of Light. And in the waist slot, we have Kiroshiro's Soul, which automatically gives stacks of Sweeping Wind when not damaging enemies. The second primary dungeon objective requires keeping Sweeping Wind active for the entire dungeon. This belt offers a major quality of life improvement, allowing us to focus much less on refreshing Sweeping Wind to keep it active. In the main hand slot, we have Kiroshiro's Blade, which provides buffs to Wave of Light, and in the offhand slot, we have Engium, which provides significant cooldown reduction after killing elite monsters. In one of the finger slots, we have Convention of Elements, which provides an occasional damage buff, and in the other finger slot, we have Band of the Rue Chambers, which provides some spirit generation. When it comes to rerolling stats on the gear, the top priority is resource cost reduction. Then take anything that increases damage output or survivability. For Kanai's Cube in the weapon slot, we have Incense Torch of the Grand Temple, which provides buffs to Wave of Light. In the armor slot, we take Cinder Coat, which provides significant resource cost reduction for Wave of Light. And in the jewelry slot, we have Ring of Royal Grandeur, which allows us to gain the 6-piece set bonus while only having 5 of the 6 set pieces equipped. For gems, we have a Topaz in the head slot for resource cost reduction, Emeralds in the torso and leg slots, and Emeralds in the weapon slots. For legendary gems, we have Bane of the Powerful and Bane of the Trapped for increased damage output, and Molten Wildebeest Gizzard for life regeneration in the event we take any hits. For Paragon, the main priorities are movement speed, maximum spirit, cooldown reduction, and resource cost reduction. Next, let's go over the skills. We'll be using Sweeping Wind with the Inner Storm rune, the focal point for the set. Next, we have Wave of Light with the Explosive Light rune, which is our main damage dealing skill for killing enemies. Next, we take Cyclone Strike with the Implosion rune to help group up monsters in the dungeon. Then Dashing Strike with the Way of the Falling Star rune for increased mobility. Next, we have Way of the 100 Fists with the Blazing Fist rune, which is our primary spirit generator attack. And then we take Mantra of Healing with the Circular Breathing rune, mainly for its increase to spirit generation. For the passive skills, we have Exalted Soul and Chant of Resonance, both which provide increased spirit generation. And then Alacrity and Seize the Initiative for increased attack speed, mainly for increased spirit generation with Way of the 100 Fist. Now let's go over the dungeon objectives. The first primary dungeon objective is to maintain Sweeping Wind for the duration of the dungeon. Once you enter the dungeon, you'll have 15 seconds to activate Sweeping Wind, and then you can't allow it to expire for the entire dungeon run. You'll simply need to keep an eye on the skills timer and refresh it before it expires. Luckily, attacking with your melee skills like Way of the 100 Fist and Wave of Light will refresh the duration, but if you're running around grouping up enemies or running from monster pack to monster pack and not attacking, then you will need to manually cast Sweeping Wind to keep it refreshed. Using Kiroshiro's Soul Belt will make completing this objective much easier, as it provides stacks of Sweeping Wind when enemies are not being damaged. So when running to get to the next monster pack, you won't have to refresh it manually. However, if Sweeping Wind is damaging enemies while you run around grouping them up, you will still need to manually refresh the skill. The second primary dungeon objective is to use your decoys that spawn from the 4-piece set bonus to hit 20 different enemies in 6 seconds, 5 different times. Decoys are spawned when you damage an enemy, including the passive damage from Sweeping Wind. When a decoy is first spawned, you will see a message on the screen indicating the 6-second duration has started. And once the 6-second duration has ended, you'll see another message indicating how many monsters you hit with decoys. So to complete this objective, you'll want to look for larger groups of enemies, then run through the group and let Sweeping Wind damage the monsters and spawn decoys for 6 seconds. Hold off on casting Wave of Light. You want the monsters to live long enough to be hit by the decoys. Once you see the message pop up indicating how many monsters were damaged by decoys, then cast Wave of Light to clear out the room. There's a 1-second delay for decoys to spawn, so make sure your Sweeping Wind damage output is not so high that it kills monsters before the decoys can spawn and hit them. Avoid equipping the Vengeful Wind legendary power that buffs Sweeping Wind damage to help avoid this. Next, let's take a look at the dungeon map. I've broken up the map into 3 main segments. This dungeon is quite large and very long. You will want to make sure you clear all enemies as you go. You won't have enough time to cover the entire dungeon twice on a single dungeon attempt. Make sure to uncover all of your minimap and clear all the side rooms as you pass by them. High-density groups of monsters can spawn anywhere in the dungeon, including in narrow passageways, so there's no special locations you need to be aware of. But it is worth focusing on the larger rooms to get your 20+ enemy groupings, since you'll be able to traverse the areas more easily. Remember that Dashing Strike can be used to teleport up and down different elevations and through walls, so leverage this ability often to get between monster packs more quickly to string together decoy hits, or just generally move through the dungeon faster to clear it. So now that you have the setup and you know how to approach the dungeon, let's head to it. Go to Act 4. Then to the Silver Spire Level 2 waypoint. From there, look for the portal to the Pinnacle of Heaven. Every version of the Silver Spire Level 2 area is unique, so the route to the portal will be different each time. Once at the Pinnacle of Heaven area, the dungeon entrance is in the upper left corner. And next, we'll look at the playthrough. For this run, I went with pretty bare bones gear to demonstrate techniques. I had to equip both Lefebvre's Soliloquy Shoulders to have enough toughness to survive, and Kiroshiro's Blade to have enough damage output to complete the dungeon. Any additional items or stats that you get, consistent with the recommendations earlier, will give you a much easier time completing the dungeon. Once inside the dungeon, run forward a few steps and cast Sweeping Wind to activate it. When you see a group of monsters, run through them to let your decoy spawn and hit them. Keep running through, you only have 6 seconds for each attempt. Once you think you've hit 20 or run out of monsters in an area, turn back and clear the ones you've passed after you get the on-screen message with the total count of how many you hit. There were only 17 in that location, so keep moving forward and repeat. Use Cyclone Strike to group up enemies close to you, making it easier for decoys to hit them. Generally, hold off casting Wave of Light to kill them until you get the on-screen message confirming the kill count. There was group number 1 of 5. If you see single enemies or small groups by themselves, go ahead and kill them and wait for the 6-second duration to reset before running into a larger group. You'll be revisiting this large intersection room a couple more times to make sure it's cleared. If you see a large grouping in the middle, try to round them up and then head to the upper right. There was enough monsters there for group number 2 of 5. Once you cast Sweeping Wind initially, you'll need to watch the duration on the Sweeping Wind stacks for the rest of the dungeon. When you're running these long stretches with few enemies, make sure to really keep an eye on it. Constantly be glancing down at your skill bar. Here's another large room with lots of space to group up monsters. Run into the middle and group them up with Cyclone Strike. Decoys will spawn once every second, so you can kill enemies before the on-screen confirmation message appears if you're confident you gave enough time for a decoy to spawn on a group. There was enough there for group number 3 of 5. Make sure to uncover all the areas on your minimap before moving on. You won't have enough time to come back later. This dungeon is too large. If you're running and not attacking, make sure to watch the Sweeping Wind duration. We had this elite singled out and probably should have killed them off. We started running too late into a 6-second duration, so this grouping was kind of sloppy. We only hit 17 monsters, but there will be plenty more opportunities, so keep moving forward. Elite monsters hit really hard. Make sure to cast Cyclone Strike when near them to benefit from the toughness bonus from the Lefebvre's Soliloquy Shoulders. Check this passageway connection back to the large intersection room, then backtrack to start segment number 2 of the dungeon map. We got group number 4 of 5 from that last pack. Remember to leverage Dashing Strike's teleport ability to move up and down ledges like this one. We got stuck there in a pack of monsters with no Dashing Strike charges. Luckily, we were still able to tag over 20 enemies for group number 5 of 5. If you have the illusory boots equipped, you can run further through the packs of monsters to tag more enemies and ensure you hit at least 20 of them. Here, head back to the large intersection room and make sure it's cleared out before moving on to segment number 3 of the dungeon map. With the first objective completed, now we can just focus on clearing enemies and keeping Sweeping Wind active. Make sure you head upstairs and check and clear this area. Leverage Dashing Strike to teleport around to save you a few seconds of travel time. Remember to keep recasting Sweeping Wind while you're running around. Kiroshiro's Soul Belt makes it much easier to keep Sweeping Wind refreshed, but even with the belt equipped, you still need to pay attention to the duration. Just keep moving your eyes back and forth between Sweeping Wind and your minimap. Do not assign a follower for this dungeon. They will just get in the way and interfere with your grouping attempts. Don't forget to check and clear this small passageway. Segment number 3 is narrow and very long. If you still need a group for the first objective, you'll really need to run through enemies to get enough decoy tags. Here's the last stretch of the dungeon map. If you have enough damage output, you may not need to attack with the Spirit Generator attack, Way of the Hundred Fist. If so, you can swap this skill out for Epiphany with the Insight Rune for occasional on-the-move spirit generation. If that's the case, then you can drop the Band of the Rue Chambers ring and use Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac in its place to help with cooldown reduction. You can also swap out your passive skills that provide attack speed with other ones that provide damage output or toughness benefits. Just a few monsters left. And we're done. Good luck trying to finish this one. If you enjoyed the guide and would like to see more content, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Thanks for watching.